und herzlich willkommen. Hello and welcome to Whisky.com, where fine spirits meet. We just had the German take. I'm still fiddling with the German. So today we're trying Glencadam with actually the Master Blender Iain Forteath. Thank you very much for being here.
Pleasure to be back. Thanks for having me back with you.
Yeah. You were on the channel. What were we having?
So we were doing Tom and Tal.
Yeah.
This time last year, actually.
Yeah,
it's a pleasure to be back in the studio.
Yeah, it was nice to having you back. Yeah, of course. Yeah, and I mean, I could pronounce your name. That's because I'm not doing it the first time. So, Glencadam. We had it in the German one. Glencadam is a little bit of a gem, a hidden gem, I would say. It's not that well known.
No, it's kind of one of these under the radar drams.
Yeah.
And it has been for a good while. Even so, when I first got into Glencadam, it was kind of a recommendation dram as well. It wasn't when I was working with them, but you kind of have to find it. But it's got a good standing in it. I think people who know Glencadam tend to really like it, which is fortunate for us, I guess. But it's a cool distillery to get to know.
Okay, so would you be so kind to tell us a little bit what we're gonna have today?
Yeah, so today's lineup, it's a nice mix of Glencadams that you can have on a Tuesday night or a Friday without kind of breaking the bank. So it's a mixture of some of the more affordable Glencadams we do, because we have some really old Glencadam also. It's a 200-year-old distillery. So today we've got the American Oak Reserve, which is this is my kind of go-to easy drinking rounded Glencadam style. We've got the Reserva Andalucia, and this is a Oloroso sherry finished one. So a bit more spicy, a bit more rich and decadent. And then we have this little treat, which is the Reserva Tawny Port, or Tawny Porto. So it's a Tawny Port finish Glencadam.
Yeah, and if you come from the Netherlands or Belgium, you can actually buy them on Whisky.com as a bundle. You get a bit of a discount here, and we do have the small packages where there are miniatures with 4cl in there, so you can have them with like a buddy or alone. And the others are more like if you are 5 people. Or
few buddies,
a few buddies. I think you get 17 4cls out of 107 bottles, so you can have a bunch of friends over.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Depends on what kind of friends you have. Yeah. Okay, so let's have a look where Glencadam is, because I think I've been around Glencadam, but I've not been in Glencadam yet.
We'll need to remedy that.
Yeah, I actually do have a green light already that I will get into Glencadam, but I don't have a date yet when I will. So they are on the east side, and actually, is it true that they just came to the market as a single malt 15 years ago?
So we were the first company or first owners of Glencadam to really release it as a single malt. There was one bottling when it was Allied, so when it used to be owned by Allied Domecq, but it wasn't like a release. It wasn't.
Was it one of these Flora Fauna or?
Similar kind of range. I'm trying to remember what it was called. But they did all the Allied Domecq distilleries had a release for a little while, but it was never really a single malt brand. It's been a blending ingredient for a very long time.
And probably also a bit of independent bottling.
And IBs, yeah. So independent bottlings as well. It's been making whiskey for 200 years this year. So it's one of these. The spirit of Glencadam has appeared in a few different places.
Mm-hmm. And it's very traditional and still a bit of a crafty work.
Yeah, so it's a pretty old school distillery. And when you get to come and see us, you'll have a chance to have a look. But it's I really like Glencadam because it is like walking back in time. It's not an all frills distillery. It's not super kind of polished. But it's a very old building. The footprint of the distillery is original from 1825.
That's an old picture of 1993.
Oh, right. Oh, that's
that's the only pictures we have.
Well, but it's a really old building, and it's built for making whiskey. That's a silly statement, but actually what I mean by that is it's not all open plan. It's not easy to get around. It's all sort of built on top of each other. So so you walk up a set of stairs to the mill room. That then flows down into the mash room, which follows a diagonal set of stairs over to the washbacks, and then under that is the still house. The walls at the distillery are 3 feet thick, so big, thick stone walls, and it's built for an average height of 1825.
Like
so
3 feet is like in the meter.
Pretty much. Yeah, so you're talking. Big thick stone walls, big old distillery.
It used to be a castle or something.
It could survive as one, maybe. So I like the fact that it's like walking back in time. A lot of the kind of, like I said, the footprint is original. The only things that really changed at Glencadam over the last 200 years is we put in this magical thing called electricity. That makes things a little bit easier. But it's still a manual distillery, so everything is turned by hand. We employ kind of a lot of people on site that run this old distillery style. And the other thing that we have changed is that they are steam stills now rather than direct fired. Mainly because we had 2 fires.
No,
but that was 100 odd years ago. But
and you now have a functioning water wheel.
We do, yeah. Which
But
is
it doesn't
cool.
power anything.
Not yet. It's one of these things. So anyone that's done a tasting with myself will know I geek out on spirit. So my job as a blender is to look at whiskey on a day-to-day basis. What I get excited about is what's inside the bottles. However, the story of whiskey is important, and yes, the wheel is actually stunning and beautiful. Does it contribute to the flavour of Glencadam? No. Is it a nice irk back to the distillery history? Yeah. It's we're the only distillery in Scotland that has an internal working water wheel. And what happened is we had the old channel was actually blocked up. It was bricked up in the still room. So we knew it was there, but we didn't really access it. And we opened this channel up. We managed to find kind of schematics and rebuild a cast steel, or a couple of cast iron and wood water wheel that's now reinstated back in.
So it's a proper water wheel. It's not a turbine or anything.
No, it's a proper water wheel. What was funny is I remember going to see it once it had been put into place. And I don't know about people tuning in or yourself, but in my idea, a water wheel is this big, graceful, slow turning. Yeah, no, it's not like that at all. It's like a chainsaw. It goes ridiculously fast, which I guess makes sense because it has to make power. It would back in the day.
Okay.
I thought it was going to be the slow flowing, nice style. Yeah, but no, it's a super rapid wheel. So at the moment we're testing it to see what we can power with it. So we are going to re-hook it up to the distillery.
Okay.
It couldn't power the full distillery anymore, but it can. It's definitely.
But the grounds, you're like heritage protected or not? What is that? The like?
Yeah, it's a listed building, so protected site.
Okay.
So this was actually part of kind of bringing back into the old history of Glencadam. So,
Okay.
So we looked at buying an old water wheel to fit the space, but we ended up using a local, I don't actually know what you call him, local water wheel smith, a local blacksmith.
Blacksmith,
But he recreated the wheel. There's a lovely video if you ever want to see it of what we do with it. But it's kind of cool.
And what I also heard is that you're surrounded by cemeteries.
Yes, we have the highest angel share of any distillery. No, it's you can see a bit of it there. It's funny. So Glencadam, because it's been around for such a long time, it's become part of the town of Brecon. So the region that it's based in, or the town that it's based in, has kind of grown around the distillery. So it's a very old part of Scotland. So it's in the Angus kind of region. But the distillery has, the housing and things have grown around it. The graveyard or cemetery has become 3/4 of our surroundings. On the other side is a football stadium.
Okay.
So we're not an easy distillery to find because we're kind of tucked away down an alleyway in the town of Brecon, which is kind of cool.
Okay. Here someone says, can you say where your ex-bourbon barrels are sourced from, and is it sourcing barrels becoming a challenge?
Yes, it is becoming a challenge to a degree. We're trying our best to keep on top. But yeah, it's a really good question. Angus & Dundee are the company that I work for, the company that owns Glencadam and Tawny Distillery. We buy from a mixture of brokers and a selection of producers. So because we are not a distillery that is twinned with an American distilling company, we don't have bourbon casks that we lean on. So we're not like Brown-Forman or a group where they have their bourbon distillery and their kind of whiskey associates in Scotland. So we buy from a big variety. Cask sourcing is a big part of my job, although it's actually Robert Fleming, who's our master distiller, that does the bourbon side. So it's becoming more difficult than it was, but we try our best to keep on top. Bourbon casks are a massive part of the profiles of both of our distilleries. So Glencadam and Tawny are quite bourbon heavy. In fact, the vast majority of our range is at least initially matured in bourbon.
Is it really distinctive which distillery you get your bourbon barrels from? Is like a maker's mark with their like maturation of wood? Is that different to, let's say, someone who doesn't really take care of bourbon barrel?
No, I mean, so we're very picky on the grading that we use. So bourbon casks are kind of classed. They have the different categories. So we only go for firsts and seconds, which are the best quality barrels you can buy. In terms of distillery differences, yes and no. So for us, we're not going to have, this needs to be from Heaven Hills or this needs to be Claremont Springs. what we're looking for instead is making sure that the mash bill of that bourbon is consistent. So if you have a high rye bourbon versus a kind of more wheat forward, like I know you mentioned makers there, they would make a difference because rye casks are going to be a bit more peppery, a bit more dry. So really, we don't look for a super high rye bourbon. But no, if you come to our warehouse, you can play bourbon cask bingo. You can see all the stencils on the end of the cask ends, which is pretty cool. So yeah, so you can see bourbon casks in our warehouse from all over.
Oh yeah, that's right. I was thinking about that as well. I was talking more about the wood, but also the rye content is probably very, very influential for the flavor.
Yeah. I think it's funny in the Scotch world. We don't tend to. I mean, we will specify if we use kind of single bodega or single kind of estates for some of our cask finishes, but actually with bourbon casks, we don't say, "Oh, this is all from Ex Buffalo Trace." I suppose part of that is due to kind of licensing issues as well. But we've never really done like single varietal bourbon casks as a release. Not yet, anyway. Maybe we should. But
you do have a water source. Is the berry burn? Is that also where you get the water for the water wheel, or is that?
No. So the berry burn is so it's where we get the outflow water. Our production water is from the Moran Spring, which is up it's up in the Angus Glens, so it's a bit further away. Interesting fact. Well, I don't know if interesting is the right word, factoids, but we actually use the old Victorian water source for the town. So when Brechin was smaller, we now have a diversion from that, which came down from the spring. These days, Brechin has a new water source, so the distillery now uses the old town source, and they have a new source as well, which is kind of cool.
Nice. Production capacity is quite high, as it is 1.4 million liters, but it's not just the single malt distillery, but also workhorse for white label, blends, all that kind of stuff.
Sort of. I mean, compared to Tomintoul, it's a bit smaller. So Tomintoul is doing about 3.4 millilitres. But Glencadam for us, we've got it at full production. So Glencadam is working 24/7. We are using everything we're distilling there. So Glencadam, as an ingredient, but for those of you that are about to taste with us as well, the Glencadam's kind of signatures is really bright, fruity characteristic. So when it comes to blending, Glencadam, even in 1 or 2% in a blend, can make a really great difference. So for that, we use it in our blends. We use it in our single malts, of course. So we're working it as hard as we can, but 1.4 million litres as much as we can get from the true stills. So that's where we're at for production.
Do you have a visitor centre? I think that's a big story now.
Not yet. Soon. This year I'll answer that question differently. Hopefully. It's been in the building for a while, but the Glencadam Visitor Centre should go live around the summertime, which is pretty cool.
And that's where your big celebration is going to be?
Possibly, yes. We also turned 200 officially this year. It's funny saying that. This is my first time I've been on the road since the New Year, and it's always been Glencadam's nearly 200. This year we are going to be 200, which is cool.
200 is
it's a pretty cool milestone. So that'll all be twinned in with the opening of the visitor centre and everything with that too.
So we have another picture, and with the history, there is actually a picture from Kirsch that we actually borrowed, and look, that's what you said with old building and all very
all kind of built up
integrated.
And that has been a challenge for the visitor centre as well, because it's an old footprint with very thick walls. Like I said, you can't just change it all over.
Health and safety and wheelchair accessibility is
that's pretty difficult. That's
always with the historic buildings, like this is just very, very steep, and you have to go there. There's no wheelchair going up there.
Well, so we've had to put in a new stairwell, because the original way to get into the still house was down a steep stair from the mash house for your fermentation rooms. But the average height back in 1825, I think, was 5'7". So I'm 6'1", so it's about up to here on me, and the wall does not bounce. So I've banged my head on that wall several times.
So that's like 1.8 meters or something like that. Yeah.
Thereabouts. So the ceilings are low. We've had to expand these things. We've had to
I've been to a lot of distilleries where we have to just.
Duck out and look out for some yellow tape. That's it.
There's always that yellow black tape.
But no, that will we won't have the yellow and black tape anymore. But so we're currently trying to find a user friendly path through the distillery as well.
Okay, so as you said, it has been legalized 1825. So maybe it's 200 years old, maybe older.
Well, yeah, I mean, so the Angus blends were famous for illicit distilling.
Yeah, so probably they have distilling before.
Just like the east coast of Scotland, I mean, it's a big part of the farmland of Scotland. It's a very fertile farmland. So the chances of there being some other distilling ism is very high.
But this is what you keep as the year of the founding, and the founder was George Cooper, and they only had it for 2 years, and then David Scott took over it, and they had a bit of a rough time in between, so not 200 years of production.
The production's been relatively good, but it's changed hands quite a few times.
Yeah, but it was closed between 1837 and 1852, and now I said there was a world war between that. There was no world war there. That's 100 years before that.
That's a bit confusing there. But,
yeah, but from the second dates or the later dates, it looked like the second the third and fourth digit, it looked like, that's close because of war, but no, that's 100 years before. And they changed quite hands quite sometimes. You had 1987 Allied Lloyds, then Ballantynes, and
so that was under the same grouping. So Allied Domecq were the kind of group that had Ballantynes. They had Stuart's Cream of the Barley was another big one. And there is this fruitiness of Glencadam is something that's made it very desirable in blends. So there was a big component of Ballantynes, but it was actually the home of Stuart's Cream of the Barley. I'd love to know in the comments if anyone's actually tried Stuart's Cream of the Barley, because it is still a brand for export, but it was actually a really good blend. It just has a bit of a cheesy name. But yeah, Stuart's was the homeland of Glencadam was the home of Stuart's, and the blending kind of grocer that Stuart started in is in Dundee, which is the closest city to Brechin. So there's a cool kind of old history there with the distillery.
And 2000 was the last time you were stopped working.
Yeah, so when Allied kind of folded or became what is now mainly Pernod Ricard, they left a couple of distilleries behind, and one was. It's in Glencadam, so it was kind of mothballed.
Mothballed, but not mothballed means it's still wet and not everything destroyed.
Yeah. So actually, until recently, he's retired now. But we had a chap called Paul who worked for us, who his job was to look after Glencadam for the 3 years that it was closed. Which is not a bad job, really. So he used to go and read his book, walk around the site, practice his golf swing a few times,
and keep the wood wet.
Yeah. So he was the keeper of the distillery until we brought it on, and he actually joined Glencadam when we bought the distillery. So Robert Fleming, as mentioned, our master distiller, he's 51 years in the whiskey industry this year. But Robert has always been a fan of Glencadam. He knew the distillery, so when it came up for sale, when it had been closed, he was really keen to make it part of our portfolio. So Glencadam was something that was on our kind of in our sights that we were keen to acquire, and we kind of ironed out a deal with Allied back in 2003, and that was the rest is history.
Yeah, that's good. So I think enough talk. Let's have one. Have some.
Hopefully it's putting you in the mood for a dram.
Yeah.
There we go. Splash more? I wasn't sure what size of push you're doing.
Too much.
There we go. Leave it on the table.
Ooh, someone said Bob Sander bought the Tawny Port bottle recently. Beautiful color and taste. Yeah, we'll come to that.
Nice.
Visited the distillery years ago and got a private tour from Doug, the distillery manager.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Have a 32-year-old Montgomery bottle. What is that?
So Montgomery's is a single cask. Single cask independent bottling.
Okay.
I saw someone earlier as well in the comments that said that they're tuning in from the US and they know Glencadam 15, which is really cool to hear. So yeah.
Yeah, I think we are trying this time. We are trying the kind of the no age statement range.
Yeah.
I think wood finishes is pretty dominant here, except for the first one.
Yeah, the first one gives you an idea of the spirit, but these ones are.
You do have age statements.
Yeah, so classic Glencadam is actually all bourbon casks. So the classic range is the 10-year-old, the 15. There's an 18, and there was a 21, which might come back at some point.
But 21 would be the time when it was mothballed.
Indeed. So we have we've kind of worked through this in the distillery, and so we have this 3-year gap, so 2000 to 2003, no production, or no bottling anyway, but yeah, no production for the distills. So the 15-year-old was the first whiskey to follow that, I guess. So just when people were starting to know what Glencadam was. The 15 started to get really good reviews and some really positive feedback, and then we ran out of stock of it. So we had 3 years with no 15. Then we had, the 18 was the next that was had the production gap. The 18's just come back, and then 21 will be the next one. But yeah, so Glencadam 10 is our mainstay in the house. So if you wanted a Glencadam to really get a feel for it, American Oak or the 10 is a classic Glencadam expression to get your teeth into. But yeah.
Okay, let's try it. Ooh. It's no coloring, by the way.
Actually, this one is coloured.
This is coloured.
Yeah, I feel rather than having anything false information out there.
Really?
So the standard Glencadam range is 46% and non-chill filtered. The American Oak Reserve is designed to be an entry level into the Glencadam range. So this one is 40%.
Okay. I said something wrong in the German tape.
In the German one. But yeah, that's the classic. The rest of the range is 46, but this one is designed to be that kind of entry level Glencadam. So it's coming in at 40.
Yeah, it's coming in at 40, so it's a bit of more of a sweet one. But what I found is it's very sweet, very bourbon character, caramel color, vanilla. But it feels a little bit more round, a little bit more honey taste, and also here I don't have that flavor of something fresh like a lemon, like a lime, that comes in with the bourbon casks.
Yeah, so this is using some really high quality bourbons. I know that's a cliche thing to say, really, but the this is made of only first and second fill bourbon casks. So these are first fills are fresh bourbon barrels from the USA, and then filled with our spirit. Second fills have had one filling before and filled again. So the first fills are very active. The second fills are still quite juicy and quite active oak there as well. So this is a combination of only those. For full maturation, so it does have a nice roundness. It's not too sharp. It doesn't taste particularly spirity.
But it's really, as you said, it's a very nice entry level.
Yeah,
I mean, it's Glencadam is a bit of a hidden gem, but it's not that expensive.
No,
and it's currently at Whisky.com in Germany. It's $31.90. Will be a bit more expensive in Netherlands or Belgium because of taxes. But it feels like an entry level. You could give this to a beginner as well.
Yeah, for me, so you get this lovely kind of apple pie kind of fruitiness to it. There's a little bit of spice, but there's definitely that kind of the orchard fruits. There's a sweetness to it. The honey, I think you're absolutely right on. So it's not a whiskey that's going to scare you away. And it's a lovely easy sipper. That was kind of what the designation of this whiskey was, to let people who are curious of what Glencadam is be able to buy a bottle at a good price. But also to be a nice footway, a nice entry level into the rest of the range and to discover some of the other things we do.
So no, slàinte.
Slàinte mhath. Cheers. Cheers.
It's nice. It has a sweetness, but strangely enough, it's a lot more spicy than in the nose. Yeah. You have a bit of spiciness in the nose, but you have a lot more spiciness in the taste. It has that oakiness. It has a bit of what is that? Like gingerbread, like one of these old spicy gingerbread types.
It's a funny one. So Glencadam has always been known for being 46% whiskey. We're not planning to change that for the core range. Don't worry, nobody go crazy. But actually, this whiskey doesn't lack. It's quite spicy and quite robust, and that was kind of the designation for this. Glencadam is fruity and spicy as our house style, and that was very much part of this as well. So you do get a structure. You get a kind of mainly around the sides of your tongue. You're getting this kind of drying, kind of nutmeg and kind of peppery spices. And gingerbread, I think. Is it.
Nutmeg peppery. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. Nice. Is that nutmeg and pepper? Is that in gingerbread? Probably not.
Nutmeg might be. Yeah,
but it tastes like it.
Gingery spices.
I like it. But now second round is a bit more hefty. Yeah. First round was a little bit less, so it adds up to it. Because I already did the German one. So next up is a little bit production, but we are lacking a little bit of information material, but now we have Ian because I know. I have to apologize. We do have a very old picture, and then also this picture. that has been taken with an analog camera.
I was going to say that looks very Polaroid. Yeah, it's,
and also we scanned it and then we compressed it and we deleted the original. So
it's accurate enough. So yeah, that's our Porteous Patent Mill. So Glencadam had its own malt floor when it was built in the 1820s, 1825. I'm kind of stumbling my words there. But it stopped doing its own maltings when a local maltster opened. So there's a famous maltster called Bayards, who are based in Arbroath. And Arbroath is a pretty close town to Brecon. And when they kind of were up and running, then we stopped. This is before Angus Dundee had it, but Glencadam stopped doing its own maltings when a commercial maltings opened very close to it.
But you do only non-peated malt.
Non-peated malt, yes.
All of it. Okay.
So it's Laureate is the barley strain we're using now, and unpeated. So we're looking for fruit and that kind of spice structure, not a kind of peated element to it.
Does it look any different than 1993?
Not too different. No, I tell a lie. I think the paintwork in the background is now burgundy. Rather than blue. But yeah, so it still has the wooden top on it. It's an old mill. That mill's over 100 years old, which is kind of cool. So we have 3 grist bins, or 3 malt hoppers.
So that must be like when that was 1993. That must be 32 years old. But I'm not quite sure. Maybe it's 1998. So I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, it looks similar but different. But yeah, so that's our workhorse mill. So yeah, Porteous Patent Mill. I'm sure everyone that's spending their time tuning into a whiskey tasting knows what a Porteous Patent is. But yeah, this thing it does its job very well.
Job for hundreds of years. Yeah, the mash tun is just 5 tons, and I don't have any more to say about that. Do you have anything?
It's a traditional style mash tun. So the mash tun has a stirring gear.
It does have a steering gear.
Yeah, so unlike Tom and Sal is a lauter mash tun.
Yeah, no.
Modern. Which is more modern style. Glencadam's a stirring gear mash tun, so it gives you the kind of cloudy wort, very cereal driven style.
Okay. They're going more cloudy than these.
Yeah.
Okay. What I always wanted to know: do you have like the gears are like you have gears outside and in the middle, right?
The rakes. So they have little curves on them with outside prongs.
Yeah.
So they are scooped like tiger claws that are on a kind of circular rotation.
But do you have to like grease the gears, or is that?
Sad. I was wondering if we'd see a picture of it. The only sad thing with our mashing is that we used to have a cast iron mash tun. We had a really old mash tun.
Oh, you don't have it anymore.
We had it got scrapped, unfortunately. We had a lot of problems, which is a real sad thing because it was beautiful to see and it was a really old one. So now we have a traditional mash tun, but it's in stainless steel, so it's self-cleaning, which the guys at the distillery are very happy about. So instead of
but you kept the old style of raking.
It's got the original.
You have a stainless steel that is
with a stirring gear. Yeah.
I've never seen that.
Kind of cool.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I'm actually a mechanical engineer, so I'm really looking forward to seeing that how you manage that.
So it's a deep bed, narrow mash tun with a stirring gear. So it's a traditional style mashing.
Yeah. And then we do have pictures of the washbacks, also very.
That's an old picture too. Yeah.
Pressed. And there are 6 washbacks with 28,000 liters. Is that true?
Yeah, I think that's where they're at. I thought they were slightly bigger than that, but 28,000 liters is the right kind of thing.
I'm not quite sure what my father was told back in the days when I think he just arrived and was like, "Can I have a look?" And they were like, "Yeah, sure." Cool. So probably sometimes you get told how much they fill them.
Yeah.
So probably filled with the 20,000 liters.
Yeah, I'm second guessing myself, but maybe that's the exhaustion I'm trying to think. But no, so they are. That's kind of what it looks like now. However, the blue paint is gone. But we are also now putting in wooden washbacks.
Ah, okay.
So we're trialing it at the moment. So we've gone 2 wooden washbacks now. So we have 4 stainless and 2 wood. I suppose the water wheel's been part of that. Is we're now looking at bringing in some some kind of older aspects to the distillery. So bringing it back to its older footprint. So it's something we're trying.
The wooden ones are better for winter, right? Because they are more insulated. And
better for temperature control.
More consistency, right?
Yeah. Harder to clean. And if there's an issue with the wooden washback, they look beautiful, but if there's an issue with them, they can be a bit more fickle because you've got a deep clean wood rather than spray down some stainless steel. But I'm excited to see what they'll do, and they look and smell beautiful. So
nice.
It's always nice.
Then we're going for tasting number 2.
Sure.
That's the Andalusia now.
Yeah, so this is fun. mainly because this is one of my first babies in the Glencadam range. So I've been with Angus and Tea for 10 years this year. I've been blending with them, and I went from a junior to a kind of more senior role, and then they made me Master Blender in 2021. But over that time, I've dabbled with a few projects, and Andalucia was one that I was kind of working on, which is quite cool. So this is a whiskey that's become a catalyst to several of our releases. So if you remember in our tasting last year, we did Tom and Tell Cherie. So Cherie and Andalucia were released at a similar kind of time. They're a similar sort of makeup, so it's a non-age statement. Big mixture of ages there, and with a pretty hefty finish. So this is a 2-year finish on this. This is it. So it's a kind of medium-bodied sherry style. The reason we brought this out, I know we'll pour one in a sec, but the reason we brought this out was because Glencadam until then was almost exclusively bourbon. So we had Glencadam 10, 15, 18, 21. And if somebody wanted a sherry Glencadam, because everybody loves a sherry dram, especially in the whiskey world, people love a sherry finish or a sherry style. The only one we had was a 19-year-old, and it was beautiful, but it was £110.
Okay.
So the only sherry option we had was an expensive one. Before that, we'd done a 14-year-old, which is lovely as well. But they were still, if you wanted to try a sherry style Glencadam, they were still a little bit more pricey. This one here was designed to be at the same kind of price point as our 10-year-old. So this is showing off Glencadam in a slightly younger format, but with this Oloroso expression.
It's 46%. Now it's unsure filtered and not colored.
Yep.
And we do sell it at Whisky.com for $39.90 in Germany. That taxes apply to different states in Netherlands or Belgium.
Now, obviously, I'm biased, but for €39, I think this whiskey really delivers.
Glencadam has, I would say, reasonable prices.
We want people to drink our whiskey, which is quite the honour. I mean, obviously, the more expensive or the more old they become, the more pricey they become.
Yeah, some of the whiskey nerds are saying, don't talk too much about Glencadam, otherwise people will start buying it and the prices will go up.
But it is, I mean, we do want people to drink our whiskey. We're a brand that have been under the radar for a long time, and as the years have come on, even in the 10 years I've been with Angus and Tea, it's amazing the number of people that know Glencadam, and we'll talk about it in really high regard. And yeah, so this is part of all the whiskies we're trying today, I guess, are part of a range of letting people get to know the distillery without bursting the budget. And then by all means, if you want to try an older edition of whatever we have, there are older expressions, and Glencadam ages beautifully.
And the finish now, you start off with normal bourbon cask, and then you add the Oloroso sherry cask, the Andalusia, and you said the finish in Glencadam is usually a bit longer. Yeah,
so we don't really do short finishes at Angus and Tea. The youngest finish we have on any product is 12 months. Most of them are about 24 months, and this is a 24-month finish. So this is, again, you could dabble with words like secondary maturation and other things. I think we're kind of old school in our approach. We're all about the liquid side, and we don't really faff about with that kind of terminology. So we've always just called it a finish. But yeah, you get a good impartation of flavour, and I think that for me in the blending side anyway, kind of when you do cask finishing, the younger stages of that are going to give you what was in the cask before. So you're going to get an impartation of the flavour of what's in the surface level of the wood. If you leave that for a couple of years, if you leave that for a more distinctive time, you let it kind of heat up and contract with the seasons, you start to get what makes the oak. So it makes the oak the reason they choose it for the maturation. So this is all European sherry we use for this, or European sherry oak. So you really get into it when you leave that finish for 2 years. You're getting more of the spices from the European oak. You're going to get, again, a ginger kind of spice coming in there. You're getting nice kind of depth and structure and body and oils and tannins and things that come through as well. So we like to do a longer finish to give you more than just what was there before in the cask. We want you to taste the wood itself, the reason these are our premium barrels.
Nice. So I do find the first one a little bit in there. You do find like the sweetness, a little bit of a honey touch to it, but it's, as you said, a lot more rounded, a lot more intensity. So this was more of a sweet friendly one, and this one goes in much deeper with the Oloroso, the sherry, a little bit of a bittersweetness, a little bit of a cacao chocolate note to it. Yeah,
so I actually really like the little bit of bitterness to this, and in a way, so kind of, you've probably heard the terminology sherry bomb before. This isn't a sherry bomb. It was never designed to be one. Because Glencadam's spirit is fruity and spicy, as I mentioned. It's lean and it's crisp and it's got a brightness to it. So we could put it into a first fill Oloroso and make it super dark and heavy if we wanted to, but actually we wanted to show off the spirit character here. So we were careful selection of the casks used. But for me, you get the fruitiness of the Glencadam spirit, and then you get this, the kind of, it's more of a medium-bodied kind of sherry finish on this one. So you're going to get the chocolate and the toffee and the classic Oloroso notes. But I like your tasting notes. And cacao and kind of bitter notes come through for the longer finishing there.
Here, 2 beers or more has something to say. Nose, cinnamon, fresh apple, brown sugar, and a shot of lemon.
Yeah, there's definitely a citrus kick to it. And again, that's the spirit.
But much less than the other one. Yeah, the
Yeah.
other one was just such a bourbon character.
Yeah. Cheers.
Yeah.
Sláinte
Cheers.
mhath.
Sláinte.
Cheers.
40%, 46%, much more volume to it, and you have a more of a oaky bittersweetness. That chocolate, no, it's not chocolate. It's more cacao. That bitterness of the cacao coming through, but in a good way, and combined with that feeling of that bourbon cask. So you realize, yeah, it's a finish, but it adds a lot of nice touch to it. Yeah,
Thanks.
but it has more than just a smidge of it. You realize, yeah, 2 years is you could call it a second maturation. Yeah,
It's got some guts. I think that's the thing. It gives you that a little bit of spice and bite and oomph. For me, it's like cooked apples and tiramisu. You get like there's a kind of sweet fruit, bit of spice there. There's definitely a kind of coffee kind of dryness at the tail end, which I quite like. Makes you want another one, which is drink responsibly. But yeah, it's got this nice structure and depth. And as I mentioned briefly, this was a catalyst for the rest of the cask finish range. So the success of Tawny and the success of Glencadam Andalucia is the reason we have things like the Reserva PX, the other cask finish range,
the Tawny,
and the non-age statement category. Yeah, we thought it'd be fun to show people these different wood finishes, these different casks, but at an affordable price point. As well as we have the older expressions as well. So it's not belittling when we're saying these are affordable, but 40 euros for a bottle of whiskey like this, I think is quite good value.
Yeah, but still, this one I would say, this is more for the little bit more advanced connoisseur. I would not give this as a first drink to a beginner.
Yeah, I think if you're into sherry whiskey,
maybe the first tasting, the last one.
This one does tame a little bit with water. So because you get a lot of spice from these European oak casks. When you add a touch of water to that, it does soften it up a little bit. It becomes a bit more milk chocolate. So it goes from that kind of darker chocolate and coffee to more of a milk chocolate, almost praline kind of style to it. So it does soften up for those. If you find it a bit spicy, try it with a touch of water as well.
I do have a bit of water. What is that? Highland. The right one, right? You want one? Or?
I quite like it as it is, to be fair, but don't worry. But it does soften it up. Takes a bit of edge off. The other thing, which I don't know if it transfers everywhere, but the other tasting note I always get from this one is like cherry bakewells. You get there's a red berry note in here that I really like.
It really tames that oak spiciness, cacao taste, and makes it more like a little bit more bittersweet chocolate. Not one of these 80% chocolates, but more of the 60-70% chocolates.
I'll use that in a tasting note next time we're doing for the back label. 60% milk chocolate or cacao.
Chocolate. I would really like to do like a proper chocolate tasting with someone who knows chocolate, not like I don't know, because we always get these chocolates, and there's so much variety going from 43 to 99 or something like that, and I think there's a lot behind that, but never got into that up till now. Yeah,
it's have you ever? I mean, similar to whiskey tastings, if you can, some of my favorite tastings I've done have been with cheese specialists. So people that know cheese as well as we know whiskey.
Okay.
And it's great so again that passion for cheese, but just understanding how the maturation and the styling of how they kind of make the cheese from the beginning to the rennet to the selections of I'm doing it an injustice by describing it, but it's similar thing if you can find a specialist in that field. A chocolate specialist.
But I think cheese is younger, right?
Well, I mean,
cheese is not like 10 years. If you have 10-year-old cheese, it's like
But it's amazing to see that kind of balance. And yeah, I think you could get a chocolate specialist on in the secret.
Oh yeah, cheese is probably also a very
good whiskey pairing.
Connoisseur-led business.
Yeah.
I think there's probably a scene in there that are very cheesy nerds.
I mean, I fall into that category. To be fair, I think I'd happily, geek out on cheese.
I think Great Britain is a cheesy country. We do have cheese in the Alps here, but like with the cheddar and all that kind of stuff, it's a cheesy country,
yeah.
Cottage cheese and
I didn't get to this size without eating some cheese. That's the
yeah. So let's get back to the distillery.
Sorry everyone.
Let's get back to the distillery. Distillation. You just corrected us because I think on Whisky.com we always said 14,000 and 14,000, but the wash still is 17,000 liters. And I think that's also a newer picture.
It is. Well, you can tell because it's a newer still than that one. So, so as you probably know, if you've been to distilleries, we tend to replace parts of stills rather than the whole thing if there's wear out and things like that. But actually, the spirit still at Glencadam got to a stage that it's seen a lot of good years of service, and we decided to put in a new one. So yeah, that is the new still. You can tell because it's kind of purple as you see around the base there.
But did you like build it like the same as the old one?
So built in the same size and spec as the last.
Okay.
So there's no change there, but it was a really interesting thing to see. I don't know if you've ever seen a new still before, but they're really beautiful colours. They're blues and purples and they're really interesting hue. They eventually settle to your classic copper colour, that kind of kind of muted kind of brass. But it's they were really cool. The strange factoid to this. Sorry to interject. This is I'm interjecting with too much here about cheese and all sorts.
Okay, fine.
The strange fact with this one is we did a competition to name that still.
Okay.
Which is a disaster, really. So we let the public get to name the still, but no, the still.
Stilly McStill face.
It wasn't far off. That was a contender. My favourite was when there was a chap in the US that said the name should be the Glencadam Juice Master 6000. I thought that was quite good. But the one that won, because it went to a public vote, was A Still Has No Name. Because Game of Thrones was very popular at the time. So that still is called A Still Has No Name. There's a reason it's not got a plaque on it doing that, because when people ask and you say, what's your still called? It's called A Still Has No Name. No one understands. So that aged like a fine milk. But anyway, so that's a random side note aside. But yes, sorry, you were saying. So
it's kind of pear-shaped and has a little bit of an incline with the line arm.
It does.
So what's your spirit? Is it like rough or is it more fruity? Or?
So Glencadam's pretty cool because it's kind of the best of both worlds. So within your still shapes, big tall stills tend to give you big, brighter, lighter, fruitier spirits.
This is a bit older, right?
That's the base. So the base is still flat. But yeah, so that's a raised on the kind of brick side there. But yeah, so when it comes to your stills, your big tall stills give you your lighter, brighter, fruity spirits. Your shorter stills tend to give you meatier, heavier spirits. But Glencadam has short stills that kind of work like tall stills. And the reason for that is your shape, like you said, is kind of classic pear or kind of onion shaped. But the line arm inclines, so the line arm goes up at 15 degrees. And when you do that, you really increase your reflux. So for the spirit vapor to travel through the still, it has to go upwards in this line arm. It will condense and cool in the arm and falls back down into the still. So you get lots of copper contact. However, when that spirit does make it over the top, it's still a heavier spirit than it would be in a tall still. So the Glencadam profile is kind of thick and oily, but with this beautiful fruity characteristic. So tropical fruits and citrus are the classic notes of Glencadam spirit, but it's got a viscosity to it as well. There's this kind of heaviness to the new make, which is quite cool.
So fruity and oily. Yeah,
which is quite a cool. Fruity and viscous. Viscous. Thick. Yeah, is the best way to describe it. So it's got great aging potential because it's got body. But it's got really interesting bright notes because of this fruitiness. And literally, if you get a chance to stand at that spirit safe, which is in the pictures there, it smells like pineapple juice or like grilled pineapples. You've got this really tangy, tropical kind of aromatics coming off it. So really ester heavy. We'll make sure you get a chance to try it when you come and see us. But,
I will. So did anything change there?
No, so that's still the same. So two stills, two stills, spirit safe still in the same place.
Okay, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
We had a bit of a talk earlier with the warehouses, and now I know what you mean with double warehouses. So you see like the two roofs, like two. So that is one warehouse A and B.
Yes, yeah. So the one furthest away on the picture, the small one furthest away is warehouse 2A. Those warehouses are original from 1825, so they're the oldest warehouses in Glencadam. The newer ones with the concrete harling are not as old. So that's 2A and 2B are those, and then we have a few different. So we have a mixture of dunnage warehouses and racks warehouses on site. My favourite warehouse to visit, I always kind of vary between them. So 2A is amazing. It's got all the old kind of musts and kind of heady aromas. But Warehouse 5 at Glencadam is cool. So that's a dunnage warehouse. That's where this picture is taken. That was good timing. This picture. So Warehouse 5 has got a concrete floor. So it works like a big mirror. So it's a dunnage warehouse. So you get the really heady aromas of whiskey in the air, but there's no soil there to soak it up. So it bounces off the floor. So it's really sharp and really intense. And actually opening the door into that warehouse to begin with is really quite heady.
Oh, okay.
But it smells amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is Warehouse 5. So we've got...
And you got about 28,000 casks on site?
28,000 casks on site. And that's, as you saw in the picture, we're in a limited footprint. We can't get any more land in Glencadam, mainly because it's taken up with the cemetery. That wouldn't be very popular. That's a bad joke. But yeah, so we are limited by our footprint. But yeah, so we have 28,000 casks, and we're at capacity there as well. So
okay, but you're switching a little bit, so...
So yeah, so Tom and Tell Distillery has additional warehousing as well. So we'll store casks up there as well.
Okay.
And you spread risk as well if anyone's panicking about that. So distilleries will keep their casks and some of their casks in different warehouses. So if in the event of anything horrific, it means you hopefully shouldn't lose all your stock.
That is just a good business if you have more distilleries. It's a bit unfortunate if you just have one distillery. You just
but people
really
well actually so we other distilleries still pay to store at other places. That's part of that,
sure.
The same kind of insurance. So yeah.
Okay.
One of the things, again, if you get to come and see us, is we have lots of, as we've been a blender for a very long time, Angus and Dee have been blending since the 1950s, we do have lots of casks in our warehouses that you'll recognise from other places as well. So some other names in there too, aside from your different bourbon barrels. So it's a really beautiful warehouse to spend some time in. Okay.
Good. So let's get to the third one. And the third one is really beautiful. We had it in a German one. From just looking at it. So this is definitely uncolored, as in no artificial color, but just have a look at the color then.
So this is definitely the reddest whiskey we've ever made.
That is just a very beautiful bottle.
So the Reserva Tawny Port. So Tawny Port, do you know your difference between your ports?
There's Ruby Port and there's Tawny Port, and one of them is bottled in matured in bottles or something. What was that? The Tawny, right?
Ruby.
So
So Ruby and Tawny are your two main red styles of port. You also have Porto Branco and these things as well, but within the two main styles of port that people have probably come across back home, Ruby and Tawny are your mains. Tawny ports have spent its time in cask, so it's a more oxidative style, so more jammy, more kind of concentrated. Where you go for Ruby ports, they've spent more time in bottle, so they start in barrel and then move into bottle.
Is it a one with the residual sugar, or is it a dry one?
So the Tawny ports will have more residual sugar due to the soaking in the wood, so you get more color and more residual. Okay. So it's funny. So Ruby ports we use for longer finishes, and Tawny ports we actually finish this one for slightly less than the others in the range, because they give you a massive color and flavor in a very short space of time. So this one is 12 to 18 months matured, or finished, sorry, in these Tawny casks. And yeah, this is like a dessert in a glass. It's not crazy sweet. It does have a nice structure to it. And leaving this in the European oak casks, so these are European oak barriques, does give you some spice and structure there as well. Yeah. So you get a nice bit of fruit as well as the spice.
So it's 46% and around €50 on Whisky.com. And I never saw a red whiskey like this before.
It's not quite red, but it's definitely on the red scale.
I think I would say it's really red. I do have seen red whiskeys, but yeah, I think the Ruby ones were pretty red as well.
Well, so Ruby port casks tend to give you more of like a plummy kind of rusty color, and Tawny port gives you more of a deep red.
Yeah.
Generally, and the fruit profiles are different. So when you have a Ruby port finish, we do both. In our ranges, but the Ruby port, it gives you more of like a plummy kind of sharper fruit, and you get a lot of tannin in Ruby port casks, whereas Tawny port tends to give you more kind of a jammy fruit, more of like a cooked, like coulis or like style fruit to it. But.
Yeah, I really have to go to Portugal at some point. I've been to Jerez, but I've never been to any. What was it? Port bodegas or
yeah, for your port houses. Yeah,
port houses.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's wonderful. It has but from my point of view, you really have to nose in really deep to find that bourbon cask character, because here you have a lot of that berries and also bittersweetness, a little bit of that European touch coming durch, European oak touch coming durch, and spiciness a little bit as well.
Yeah, it gives you. So I like the structure you get with these. For me, it's like walking through a Christmas market. You know, you get a lot of that kind of spiced fruits, stewed fruits. Nice kind of balance there.
It's really a mixture of Christmas spices and fruitiness.
Yeah.
Like what do you call it? We call it Glühwein. It's
mulled wine, Glühwein. Yeah.
But not as sweet and not as cheap, because the mulled wine is usually a very cheap wine.
So I did make a mulled whiskey drink with this, and it was the business. I'm not going to lie, it was really good over Christmas. So I obviously cut it with some hot water, because otherwise it would be a very strong thing to sip. So I did a similar thing with spiced fruits and orange, and used this as a bit of a base in it, and it was really good. Unless you're driving.
Yeah, sure. But I like it. It's nice how you have a progression here with very sweet, very balanced, and now you have one with that is more sophisticated, less sweet, I would say.
Yeah, it's very rich. I think it doesn't necessarily go crazy on sweetness, but it's very big and rich. But
Pleasure.
Cheers.
Oh, in the taste, even more spiciness. Oh, a little bit of a hot touch to it as well. It's like really a bit of ginger. Is there actually ginger and gingerbread?
Yeah, kind of like raw ginger to this one.
Yeah, a little bit of a raw ginger note to it as well, but a lot of berries and like a silky berry, rosy touch to it.
Yeah,
but I really like to know how much the color just influences your taste buds. Yeah, because it looks red. Yeah, I must taste.
I mean, it's a big whiskey. I think that for me, I get there's a nice contrast similar to what you got in the Andalucia, where you get this. There's a bitter tail to this, so there is like a Black Forest Gatto-y coffee sort of dryness at the end, but you get this huge wash of fruits. When this one's drank at bottling strength, it's quite peppery and spicy. Whereas if you were to add a touch of water to this, it tames it completely. It becomes almost more like a almond liqueur. You get this kind of amaretto-y cherry thing that comes out of it, which is quite cool. Mm-hmm.
Why no age statement on the Tawny port one?
It's a good question, Christopher. I think so. For these ones, we bottle them for style. So the Andalucia, the Reserva PX, the Reserva Tawny, the Porto Branco that we do, all of those are bottled within a kind of a mixture of ages. And none of these are one age. They're a mixture of some younger and some older product. And we bottle it for end flavour. So the younger casks tend to spend a longer finish, but they give you a lot of that spice. The older casks in the mix tend to have a slightly shorter finish. So when I'm saying 12 to 18 months, it tends to mimic that way. And then we marry these together. So we're creating a flavour style. So sometimes it might use a little bit more older stock the next time, or whichever may balance. So it's not 3-year-old. It's a mixture of ages, but it's also not 15-year-old, because you can sell it by the price point. But yeah, so it's not to detract. And for our older releases, we do have our age statements on them as well. So it's a bit of both. So it's a good question. But for this one, for the Cask Finish series of the Reserva series, the idea was to have whiskies that showed off that different cask styling, but at the price point they are.
2 years or more, I think he has it in the glass. A very good taste, cinnamon, red berries, and a little bit vanilla. You really do have. I can go with the cinnamon. Yeah. You could interpret that as cinnamon, but more of a, didn't you have that awful cinnamon gum back in the days?
Oh, yeah. What was that called again?
Red something.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, and like that sharpness of a cinnamon Glam was sweet.
Atomic Fireballs with the same thing. Do you have them here?
Wrigley's Red, I thought. No.
Wrigley's Red, I think, is the chewing gum. We had a hard candy that had a very similar flavour, which is actually probably more clove than cinnamon when you think about it flavour-wise. Yeah, but
I don't know. But when you have like fresh cinnamon and you try it, you realize it's really, really sharp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and a little bit like that, because usually you have cinnamon as in it like with sugar, and that is just very pleasant and just like vanilla.
Yeah, offsets.
when you have like true vanilla, it's kind of dry, a little bit of a bitter touch to it, but very vanilla like. But usually you have vanilla with a lot of sugar, cream, and
yeah. I think I know what you mean when you're saying that kind of that vanilla. You're getting there's a kind of slightly a waxiness to it. There's a bitterness.
Bit of Spekulatius. Yeah, Spekulatius has the cinnamon in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Spekulatius with too much cinnamon.
Yeah.
I would say that has a bit of a taste to it. Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
So you have the 200 years anniversary.
We do.
And the visitor centre coming up in summer.
Summer, yeah. I say summer so that I don't want to commit to a date just in case, but it's but it is coming. It's almost there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a big year for Glencadam. We've got some pretty cool stuff that'll be coming out to celebrate the 200th. And it's a nice nod back to the past of Glencadam. We might be bottling the oldest ever cask of Glencadam that we have.
Nice.
That'll all become clear, I'm sure, soon. But yeah, no, I think hopefully for those that are listening or tasting along, it's a cool distillery. Quite a unique style. Every distillery company is going to say that, and I'm aware that I'm being biased.
How far is it from Aberdeen?
From Aberdeen, you're about an hour.
Okay.
So it's about half an hour from Dundee, about an hour from Aberdeen. It's actually very close to my hometown, so where I was brought up. So I do have an affiliation with Glencadam, but I haven't always worked for them. But I've loved their drams for a long time, and to be able to be part of that history is really quite a privilege. But it's something that I'm enjoying. Even seeing people in the comments there. Glencadam is a kind of, it's a whiskey that gets people out of their chairs a little bit. They get quite excited by it. So hopefully for those that have tasted along, I hope you've enjoyed that kind of snapshot into what Glencadam is.
And here MG says Glencadam is a hidden gem, bros. Yeah, definitely.
Nice.
Glencadam is a hidden gem, as it is very old and not that well known. So Iain, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I think next time I'll visit you.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, next time.
Hopefully it will work out with like schedules and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And we didn't have the voting. Can you take a voting, or is it like picking your favorite child?
No, we can take a voting. That's okay.
In the German one, I had the 231, and I think I'm doing it again. It's just that today, maybe this time the first one was really good because it was for me, it was well balanced. The first take, on the German one, the first one was just a bit too nice, sweet, just entry level, I would say.
Yeah.
This time it just added to it and was a full flavored one, I would say. Yeah. But the second one just has with 46%, and the Oloroso just has so much power. I really do like it.
I think it's so normally I would say Andalucia, but I don't know if it's because it's really cold outside or just how my palate's today. But actually, the Tawny Port was absolutely singing for me today. I love them all, and again, that's I think the great thing about whiskey. The reason that we all love whiskey and we tune into whiskey broadcasts and we come and talk about it is because there are so many different flavors and styles. Again, I'm preaching to the converted there, but I'm sure that you'll have times when you fancy a particular flavor style. Normally 9 times out of 10, Andalucia would be my go-to for a lot of Glencadams. But the Tawny Port is really, really singing for me today in the glass. So I'd probably be 3-2-1.
3-2-1.
For today anyway. And that's no detriment to the others either. It's just
Patrick also had that. Yeah. I think if I'll be in a different state, I would probably also go 3-2-1 because I think the Tawny Port is just very, very interesting. But for me, it was just, I don't know, I just couldn't connect to it that much as the Oloroso one.
Yeah, it's cool though.
Yeah,
but I'd love to know what people others had thought of that too. I hope you all enjoyed the. The question here. Oh, cool.
They went with the Andalucia Oloroso with 60%, and the Glencadam Porto, the other one, the Oak Reserve, really didn't cut that much.
I think,
strangely enough.
it's one of these things that I don't think that's a detriment to the dram. It's the most affordable on the range.
Yeah, it's just the others
you're
are just
competing against others.
so nice.
Yeah, yeah.
The second one is just such a well balanced one, and the third one is just so interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't think that's a negative, but no, there's a great range to try in Glencadam. I saw some of the comments that people had said about the 10-year-old. It's a big mainstay for us as well. But yeah, and actually of this range, the one we didn't really talk about was Reserva PX, which has been really successful for us. So we did the same sort of finishing as the Andalucia, but it was with Pedro Jimenez cask, and that won loads of awards. Well, last year now. So much so that I'm trying my best to keep up with stock, but it's it's done really well. And again, when you get a whiskey that gets people's attention like that, it's really good for this brand. We've always known it's made great whiskey, but people are finally getting a chance to try it and get to understand it. And I think that when you get headlines like that, it gets more people trying your whiskey and getting to share this fantastic brand with people. So
nice,
always nice.
Yeah. So, as I said before, I'm really looking forward to meeting you in fall.
Looking forward to having you.
Yeah, and if you want to enjoy another live tasting, there's going to be up next in February the 7th, and this is going to be with Kavalan and Sylvia Engelhardt. And yeah, so thank you much for watching, and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And see you next time.
Sanjava.